Seraphina, a petite girl, less than 1 m40 tall, with a slender body and a childlike face that looked no older than 10 years old, was in a state of panic. She was wearing a simple white dress, and her big round eyes reflected pain and fear. Her belly was visibly swollen, creating a shocking contrast to her small body. Beside Seraphina, Thatcher, a man with a face full of pain and anxiety, rushed into the hospital, holding the little girl in his arms and screaming desperately, "Doctor, please. She's about to give birth." Thatcher's scream echoed throughout the hospital corridors, attracting the attention of everyone present. The nurses, extremely shocked, rushed towards them, while the patients and their companions stood watching the scene with bewilderment and concern. "What's going on?" A nurse tried to keep calm as she approached the couple. Seeing Seraphina's condition, her professionalism seemed to struggle with the anger burning inside her. "She's in labor," Thatcher cried, his voice cracking with desperation. "Please, we need help." Without hesitation, the nurse called into the intercom, "We need a stretcher at the main entrance immediately." While waiting for the stretcher, the nurse tried to comfort Seraphina, who was barely conscious from the pain. "Hold on, little one, we'll help you," she said softly, but inside she was growing increasingly angry and confused. How could such a young girl get into this state? When the stretcher arrived, they carefully placed Seraphina on it and quickly wheeled her into the emergency room. Thatcher tried to follow, but another nurse stopped him. "I'm sorry, sir, but you have to stay here," she said firmly but sympathetically. "We'll take care of her. But we need to know what happened." Thatcher nodded, his face a mixture of pain and despair. "The girl, she's my responsibility," he muttered, his voice almost choked with the weight of the situation. "I can't leave her alone." In the emergency room, doctors and nurses worked frantically to stabilize Seraphina. The doctor on duty, a man of many years' experience, had never seen anything like it. As he washed his hands, his mind went back to the moment when he had started his shift, thinking it would be a peaceful day. What kind of monster could do this? He muttered to himself, his eyes filled with rage. "She's just a child." Meanwhile, in the waiting room, whispers turned to whispers, then to clear conversations as those present tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. "Did you see that girl? She can't be more than 10 years old," a pregnant woman said, her face pale with disbelief. And the man accompanying her added in a disapproving tone, "He must be the one responsible. How could anyone do such a terrible thing?" A pervert, another whispered, his voice filled with disgust. "He should be thrown in jail for what he did." Amidst the tense atmosphere, Thatcher sat in the corner, head in hands, trying to ignore the criticism around him. He knew he couldn't let those words affect him. The most important thing right now was Seraphina's health. In the operating room, the doctor approached Seraphina, trying to give her some comfort before she fell into a coma from the anesthesia. "I'll do everything I can to make sure you're okay," he said, his voice filled with determination. As the surgery began, the medical team braced themselves for the unexpected. Nurses came and went, carrying instruments and trying not to look at the man waiting outside for news. Their minds were focused on the little girl lying on the operating table, and only one question rang in their heads: how did she get into this situation? Time seemed to stand still as the entire hospital was filled with tension and anticipation. Outside, the whispers continued, filling the air with anger and a creepy curiosity. But at the center of the tragedy was just a little girl and the medical team fighting to save her and her baby. Outside the emergency room, the air was filled with tension and whispers. Thatcher Jones sat in one of the hallway chairs, his face in his hands, crying silently as worry washed over him. Seraphina had been brought in for delivery, and the uncertainty of her condition gnawed at him. Around him, the chatter grew. At first it was just quiet whispers, but soon it became clear and judgmental conversation. "Did you see that girl? She can't be older than 10, a woman whispered to her companion, her eyes filled with disbelief, and the man next to her replied in a contemptuous tone, "What kind of monster could do that? He must be a pervert. He should be thrown in jail for what he did to that poor girl," another whispered, disgust in her voice. Thatcher raised his head, his eyes red and puffy from crying. He tried to ignore the words, but each one was like a knife piercing his heart. He knew he couldn't change how others saw him now, but the uncertainty of Seraphina's condition was gnawing at him from within. "We have to call the police," a voice called from the back of the room. "We can't let this go without doing anything." A nurse who had been observing the scene with a mixture of anger and professionalism walked towards Thatcher. "Sir, we need you to tell us exactly what happened," she said, her tone firm but not lacking in sympathy. Thatcher looked at her with despair. "Seraphina, she needs help. That's all that matters right now," he replied, his voice breaking. The nurse nodded, knowing she wouldn't be able to get much more information out of him in his state. "We'll do everything we can for her," she said, trying to reassure him. Meanwhile, an elderly woman with a frown and folded arms could no longer contain her anger. "What a disgrace. That man should be locked up," she shouted, directing her anger at Thatcher. "Yes, we can't let someone like that go free," another agreed, as more people joined in the angry denunciation. "Please, everyone, calm down," a head nurse intervened, trying to maintain order. "We're in a hospital, and we need to focus on caring for our patients." "But we can't ignore what's happening," a young woman replied, glancing at Thatcher with disdain. "How could anyone do something so terrible?" The waiting room erupted in murmurs of agreement, as several people reached for their phones to call the police. The tension was becoming unbearable, and Thatcher, feeling backed into a corner, just closed her eyes, trying to block out everything around her. Suddenly, a tall, muscular man rose from his chair and marched towards Thatcher with determined steps. Without a word, he grabbed Thatcher by the collar and lifted him off his chair. "You're a bastard," he shouted, his face red with anger. "How could you do this to a child?" Thatcher, surprised and frightened, raised her hands in surrender. "No, wait, you don't understand," he tried to explain, his voice shaking. "There's nothing to understand," the man snapped, tightening his grip. "You're a monster and you're going to pay for this." The situation was about to spiral out of control when a nurse ran towards them, trying to separate the man from Thatcher. "Stop, let him go," she shouted, standing between them. "We've called the police, they'll take care of this." The man released Thatcher with a hard shove that sent him falling back into the chair. The nurse quickly checked to see if Thatcher was okay before turning to the angry man. "I understand your anger, but we can't allow violence here. Let the authorities handle this." Thatcher, breathing hard, remained seated, trying to regain her composure in the tense atmosphere that filled the room. Thatcher sat down, trying to calm down. He knew that at this point there was nothing he could do to change the way others perceived him, but he had to keep his composure for Seraphina. A few minutes later, 2 policemen entered the room, responding to reports from several people. They walked straight towards Thatcher, their faces serious and professional. "Sir, we need you to come with us," one of the policemen said, placing a hand on Thatcher's shoulder firmly but not roughly. "But Seraphina," Thatcher tried to protest, but his voice broke. "We'll investigate everything here," the other policeman assured, "but we need you to come with us to clarify some details." With a heavy heart and a mind clouded with worry, Thatcher stood up and followed the policeman, while the gossip and judgmental eyes continued to surround him. He knew he had to explain the truth, but at that moment all he could think about was Seraphina's safety, the desperate hope that the doctors could save her. The ride to the police car was a journey of humiliation. Every step echoed in Thatcher's mind, reminding him of the gravity of the situation. The whispers and contemptuous looks of those present were like poisonous arrows stabbing into his soul. When he arrived at the police station, Thatcher was led into an interrogation room. The room was cold with gray walls and softly humming fluorescent lights. The metal table and uncomfortable chairs only added to the feeling of loneliness and despair. "Sit down," one of the detectives ordered, gesturing to the chair across from him. Thatcher obeyed, feeling the handcuffs tighten around her wrists. "I'm Detective Nurse Eudora, and this is Detective Davis," the man said, opening a thick file. "We've received reports that you've committed a very serious crime. We'd like to hear your side of the story." Thatcher took a deep breath. "Seraphina is not a child," he began, his voice firm but filled with emotion. "She is my wife. She is 25, but she has a rare condition that makes her appear younger." The 2 detectives exchanged glances, their faces expressionless. "You expect us to believe that?" Detective Davis asked incredulously. "Sounds like a convenient excuse." "That's not an excuse," Thatcher insisted. "We can provide medical documentation to prove it. She's been diagnosed with a pituitary disorder that affects her growth." Nurse Eudora leaned forward, her gaze stern. "Then why hasn't anyone heard of this condition before? And why hasn't anyone confirmed your story?" Davis added, folding his arms. "From where we sit, the situation looks very different." The door to the interrogation room suddenly opened, and a determined-looking attorney entered. "I'm Thatcher Jones, attorney," he announced. "I request to speak to my client in private." The detectives reluctantly left the room, leaving Thatcher and his attorney alone. The attorney, Mr. Will Thatcher, sat down across from Thatcher, his face showing concern and determination. "Thatcher, I've talked to Seraphina," said Mr. Will Thatchers. "She's fine, and she's doing everything she can to work this out. But you need to stay calm and trust that we'll get it all straightened out." "Thank you," Thatcher whispered, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. "This is a terrible misunderstanding." "I know," Mr. Will Thatchers replied, "but we need to prove it with evidence. I'm working on getting Seraphina's medical records and contacting her doctor." When the detectives returned, Mr. Will Thatcher stood up. "I'm sorry, detectives, but my client is entitled to a fair trial. Here are the preliminary documents that document Seraphina's condition." Nurse Eudora took the documents, examining them carefully. "This is just the beginning," he said sternly. "We need to verify every detail. Until then, Mr. Jones will remain in custody." "This is so unfair," Thatcher sighed, feeling helplessness wash over her. Thatcher protested, a sense of desperation spreading through his body. "Seraphina needs my support, and I am also a victim in this situation." "I understand," Detective Davis replied, but his voice was still filled with skepticism. "However, until we can verify everything, we must proceed with caution." The next hours were a mixture of uncertainty and agonizing waiting. Thatcher was placed in a holding cell, where time seemed to stand still. Thoughts swirled through his mind like a whirlwind, reminding him of all the happy moments with Seraphina and the harsh reality they were facing. Meanwhile, the hospital was filled with an air of urgency as Seraphina Walker, a childlike girl with a visibly bulging belly, was rushed into the delivery room. This strange situation caused everyone in the hospital to gossip, filled with disbelief and worry. Dr. Whitaker, the chief of staff for the night, quickly made his way to the delivery room, his mind filled with questions. How could this happen? It's a many unusual cases in his career, but this was completely new. "Prepare for an emergency section, doctor," Whitaker ordered as he entered the delivery room. Nurses and assistants moved quickly, preparing surgical instruments and making sure Seraphina was ready for surgery. Seraphina lay on the stretcher, her eyes closed and her face pallid with pain and exhaustion. Despite her fragile appearance, her body showed every sign of a woman in the final stages of labor. "Doctor, her vital signs are stable," a nurse reported, breaking the tense silence. Dr. Whitaker nodded, putting on surgical gloves. "Okay, here we go." As he made the first incision, Dr. Whitaker couldn't help but notice the details. Seraphina's internal organs appeared to be fully developed and in perfect condition. Her uterus and ovaries belonged to an adult woman, not a child. "That's amazing," he whispered. But his comment did not go unnoticed by the team. "What's going on, doctor?" asked head nurse Collins, her voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. Dr. Whitaker looked up, surprise clear in his eyes. "Her internal organs are completely normal for a woman in her 20s. There's nothing to suggest she should look the way she does." The team continued to work in silence, processing the information while assisting with the birth. After a few tense minutes, the loud, clear cry of a newborn baby rang out in the room, bringing a wave of relief to everyone present. "It's a boy," Dr. Whitaker announced, lifting the baby up so Seraphina could see him before the nurses took him away to clean and examine him. After ensuring the baby's health, Dr. Whitaker turned his attention back to Seraphina. He completed the surgery with the utmost care, ensuring there were no complications. As he made the first incision, Dr. Whitaker couldn't help but notice the details. Seraphina's internal organs appeared to be fully developed and in perfect condition. Her uterus and ovaries belonged to an adult woman, not a child. "That's amazing," he whispered. But his comment did not go unnoticed by the team. "What's going on, doctor?" asked head nurse Collins, her voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. Dr. Whitaker looked up, surprise clear in his eyes. "Her internal organs are completely normal for a woman in her 20s. There's nothing to suggest she should look the way she does." The team continued to work in silence, processing the information while assisting with the birth. After a few tense minutes, the loud, clear cry of a newborn baby rang out in the room, bringing a wave of relief to everyone present. "It's a boy," Dr. Whitaker announced, lifting the baby up so Seraphina could see him before the nurses took him away to clean and examine him. After ensuring the baby's health, Dr. Whitaker turned his attention back to Seraphina. He completed the surgery with the utmost care, ensuring there were no complications. Dr. Whitaker entered the room, his face still reflecting the gravity of the situation. He approached Seraphina's bed and sat down in a nearby chair. "Seraphina, your internal organs are fully developed like those of an adult woman," he began, choosing his words carefully. "However, your external appearance resembles that of a child. Can you help us understand why this is happening?" Seraphina nodded, adjusting her position to hold the baby in her arms. "You have a rare condition called hypopituitarism," she explained in a soft but firm voice. "It affects your pituitary gland, preventing your body from growing and developing normally on the outside, even though you are a full-grown woman on the inside." Dr. Whitaker nodded slowly, understanding Seraphina's rare condition better. "This explains a lot, but we need to get all this information right. We'll need to contact your previous doctors and get all the records in," Whitaker said as he took in the information. Seraphina looked at her child and then back at the doctor. "I understand. I will do everything I can to help." Just then, a nurse entered the room, looking worried. "Dr. Whitaker, there is something you need to know. Thatcher, Seraphina's husband, has been arrested by the police. They are charging him with a serious crime." Seraphina felt as if her world was collapsing around her. "No, this is a mistake," she exclaimed, her voice filled with despair. "Thatcher is my husband. He has done nothing wrong." Dr. Whitaker stood up, his expression hard. "I will speak to the authorities. We need to clear this up immediately." The next few hours were a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Seraphina was interviewed by several nurses and doctors trying to gather all the necessary information. At the same time, Dr. Whitaker contacted doctors who had treated Seraphina in the past to obtain her medical records. Finally, Dr. Whitaker met with the sheriff, Captain Thompson, in a private room at the hospital. "Captain, I need to talk to you about Thatcher Jones," he began, his tone solemn and urgent. "I'm listening, doctor," the sheriff replied, his face expressionless. "Thatcher is not a criminal. His wife, Seraphina, has a rare disease that affects her physical development, doctor," Whitaker explained, handing the sheriff a stack of medical records. "These documents prove it." The sheriff examined the documents carefully, his expression softening slightly as he read through them. "I understand, doctor. This is a very unusual case, but we'll do everything we can to get to the bottom of it." Meanwhile, in the recovery room, Seraphina held her baby close, praying that things would be resolved soon. Finally, the door opened and Dr. Whitaker walked in, his face full of relief. "Seraphina, I have good news," he said softly. "Captain Thompson has reviewed the documents and they are willing to release Thatcher while we continue our investigation. Everything will be fine." Seraphina breathed a sigh of relief, her tears flowing freely. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for everything." Just then, Thatcher was led into the room by 2 police officers, his face showing signs of stress. But as soon as he saw Seraphina and her son, his face lit up. "Seraphina," he whispered, approaching the bed. "I'm here." Seraphina looked up, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Thatcher, everything will be fine. We will get through this together." Once the family was reunited, Dr. Whitaker and his team continued to work to document Seraphina's case and ensure that she and her son received the best care. Seraphina's case became one of the most memorable in Dr. Whitaker's career. Although she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, her frail body, due to her small stature and medical condition, required her to stay in the hospital for further care. News of Seraphina's case quickly spread throughout the hospital, creating both curiosity and deep sympathy among the staff and other patients. Every day, Thatcher was by Seraphina's side, caring for her and her son with a devotion that touched everyone. The nurses, who were used to seeing all kinds of situations, could not help but feel a little jealous when they saw the care and love Thatcher showed his wife. "Seraphina, here's your breakfast," a nurse named Nurse Eudora said with a warm smile as she placed the tray on the bedside table. "Today we have oatmeal, orange juice, and some fresh fruit." "Thank you, Nurse Eudora," Seraphina replied, trying to sit up. Her voice was soft but filled with gratitude. "Everyone here has been so kind to me." The nurse nodded, adjusting Seraphina's pillow so she could be more comfortable. "Relax, it's the least we can do for you. Your case is very special to all of us," Nurse Eudora said. Just then, Thatcher entered the room, holding their newborn son, Finian. His face lit up when he saw Seraphina, and he leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Good morning, my love," Thatcher said softly. "Finian and I came to see you." Seraphina smiled, her eyes sparkling with love and gratitude. "Good morning, Thatcher. How is our baby?" "Perfect," Thatcher replied, gently cradling the baby. "He's strong and healthy, thanks to you." Nurse Eudora stood by, smiling at the scene. "Thatcher, you are a wonderful father. We don't see anyone so devoted and loving every day." "Thank you, Nurse Eudora," Thatcher said, looking at Seraphina with a passionate gaze. "I would do anything for my family." In the following days, the relationship between Thatcher and Seraphina did not go unnoticed by the patients and hospital staff. Their love and devotion became the subject of much admiration and respect. One afternoon, as Thatcher was helping Seraphina walk down the hallway to strengthen her strength, an elderly patient named Mrs. Hattie approached them. "Excuse me," she said with a gentle smile. "I just wanted to say that you two inspire me so much. The love and care you have for each other is beautiful." "Thank you, Mrs. Hattie," Seraphina replied, leaning on Thatcher's arm. "We've been through so much together and we're so lucky to have each other." Mrs. Hattie nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "That's the most important thing. Love and family are the most precious things in life." As time passed, Seraphina slowly recovered, but her condition still required constant care. Every day, Thatcher made sure she was comfortable, bringing her fresh flowers, reading her favorite books, and making sure Seraphina had everything she needed. One afternoon, as Thatcher was helping Seraphina settle down after a short walk, a young nurse named Nurse Marlowe approached with a shy smile. "Excuse me," she said, a little nervous. "I just wanted to say that everyone here is talking about how amazing you are, Thatcher. The way you take care of Seraphina and your son is truly inspiring." Thatcher smiled, gently squeezing Seraphina's hand. "Thank you, Nurse Marlowe. I'm just doing what a husband should do for the woman he loves." Seraphina looked at Thatcher with tears of happiness in her eyes. "You're the most wonderful person, Thatcher. I don't know what I'd do without you." Nurse Marlowe nodded, clearly touched. "You two are a special couple. I hope you both recover soon and can enjoy life together." The relationship between Thatcher and Seraphina touched not only the hearts of the nurses but also the entire medical team. Dr. Whitaker, who had been closely monitoring Seraphina's progress, often stopped to chat with them. "Seraphina," Thatcher, Dr. Whitaker said one afternoon while reviewing Seraphina's records, "I am truly impressed with the way you two have handled this situation. Your love and dedication is admirable." "Thank you," Dr. Thatcher replied, Seraphina nodding in agreement. "We appreciate all you have done for us." Dr. Whitaker smiled, closing the file. "It has been my pleasure to help such a strong and close-knit family. Seraphina, your recovery is progressing very well. With a little more time and care, you will be home soon." The doctor's words brought a wave of relief and hope to Seraphina and Thatcher. They knew that the road to full recovery was still long, but they faced each day with determination and the unwavering support of those around them. As the sun set, painting the hospital sky in warm shades of orange and pink, Seraphina lay in bed with Thatcher and Finian by her side. She felt a deep peace and infinite gratitude for the life and love she shared with her family. Seraphina, Thatcher whispered, gently stroking her hair, "I love you more than anything in this world. Nothing can change that." "I love you too," Thatcher, Seraphina replied, her voice full of emotion. Challenges overcome through love and determination. Together, they knew that they could overcome any hardship. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth and support of their loved ones and the hospital staff, Seraphina and Thatcher understood that no matter what challenges awaited them, they would always have each other. Their love, stronger than ever, was the true strength that helped them overcome and move forward into a bright and hopeful future. After weeks in the hospital, the day finally came when Seraphina, Thatcher, and little Finian could return home. The sun shone brightly in the sky, a sign of a new beginning for the young family. Thatcher gently pushed Seraphina's wheelchair as she held Finian in her arms, his rosy face and bright eyes curiously looking at everything around him. "We're ready to go home," Seraphina, Thatcher said with a warm smile, as he helped his wife slowly rise from her wheelchair. "Everything will be fine." "Yes, Thatcher, I'm ready," Seraphina replied, feeling a mix of excitement and relief. "I can't wait to start this new chapter with our family." As they left the hospital, a crowd of journalists and photographers were waiting. Flashes of light continued to flash as they captured every moment of the family on their way out. "Seraphina, Thatcher, how do you feel about being home?" one of the journalists shouted. "We feel incredibly blessed and grateful," Thatcher replied, gently squeezing Seraphina's hand. "The love and support we've received has given us the strength to get through it all." "Seraphina, tell us about your experience in the hospital," another journalist asked, holding the microphone toward her. Seraphina smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "It was a difficult journey, but we had the support of an amazing medical team and family. I am so grateful for all the love and care we received." As they continued walking, reporters continued to ask questions, but Thatcher and Seraphina remained calm and grateful, aware that their story had touched many hearts. When they returned home, the family began to adjust to their new life together. Time passed quickly and Finian grew up healthy and strong, surrounded by the unconditional love of his parents. Thatcher and Seraphina's story became an inspiration to many, a reminder that true love can overcome any obstacle. 6 years later, on a quiet summer afternoon, Thatcher and Seraphina sat on the porch, watching Finian play in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light everywhere, and their son's laughter filled the air. "Look at our son," Seraphina, Thatcher said with a smile, his eyes full of pride and love. "It's amazing how much he's grown." "Yes, he's a wonderful child," Seraphina replied, taking Thatcher's hand. "I can't believe how much our lives have changed since he was born." Thatcher nodded gently, squeezing Seraphina's hand. "We've been through so much, but every moment has been worth it. I'm so grateful to have you and Finian." "And I have you," Thatcher, Seraphina said, her eyes brimming with happiness. "Your love and support are my strength. I don't know what I would do without you." "I'll always be here for you," Seraphina, Thatcher said, leaning down to kiss her gently. "Whatever the future holds, I know we can face it together." Just then, Finian ran up to them, his face lit up with a mischievous smile. "Mom, Dad, look what I found," the boy exclaimed, holding out his hand, which contained a small insect. Seraphina and Thatcher laughed, enjoying their son's pure joy. "That's great," Finian, Thatcher said, ruffling his son's hair. "You're a good explorer." As the sun sets, the family sits together on the porch, enjoying the peace and happiness of each other. Thatcher and Seraphina's story is not only a testament to their love and strength, but also an inspiration to all who have had the good fortune to know them. And so, surrounded by the love of their son and the unwavering support of each other, Thatcher and Seraphina look to the future with hope and confidence, knowing that together, they can face any challenge and enjoy every moment of the life they share. Seraphina and Thatcher's story is a living testament to perseverance and dedication, despite the immense challenges they face. Seraphina never gave up, and Thatcher's steadfast support is a wonderful illustration of true love and companionship in a relationship. Together, they showed us that love is not just about the good times, but also about being resilient in the toughest of times. Their story teaches us a valuable lesson about not judging others based on appearances or incomplete information. Thatcher and Seraphina faced judgment and prejudice, but they remained strong and focused on what really matters: their love and family. This is a reminder that everyone has a story, and we should approach every situation with understanding and compassion. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. What moments in this story touched you the most? What lessons did you learn from their story? Share your thoughts below and let's start an honest discussion. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Until next time, be kind and keep spreading the love.